Hi everybody, welcome to episode 1 of Pushing Positivity on the Pier. Today I am with April Hinkle. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Josh Schiller. I've started the HIGH5iVER movement, which at its core is a mission or a movement to push positivity into the world and to make positivity an actionable value in each of us. So with that being said, I'd just like to introduce you to everyone and also just hear a little bit about your story. And April, if you could just introduce yourself to everyone a little bit. I know that you have started a nonprofit called Mother's Keeper. So if you could just kind of give everyone in the audience a little bit of a background on what Mother's Keeper is and what the mission of Mother's Keeper is as well.
Sure. So Mother's Keeper started about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, with a school project. I was feeling, I was in college, St. John's College for psychology, and I was feeling like I wanted to apply some of the information I was learning. I was fresh from California. East Coast is new to me. That grit and the social impact and all the movements that were happening really struck me as interesting and something to be a part of. So I wanted to take what I was learning about the community, about New York City, and about our criminal justice system and kind of social groups, and see how I can make an impact. And so I started with Mother's Keeper, and I raised I think it was $3,000 to teach young men and women whose mothers have been incarcerated a little bit about themselves. I give them an opportunity to kind of self-reflect. They were all in stages in their lives where they were either struggling with drugs or gang violence or homelessness, and I figured let's just take 2 hours twice a week and just kind of breathe and kind of think about ourselves and where we want to go. The teenage years are very volatile, and so I was trying to just give them a space to do that. I ended up teaching that class. It was art-centered mostly. And then that kind of morphed into a job with the agency, Fortune Society, and continued to work as an advocate for these youth and then also their parents. I kind of played it safe at first. I thought I'd start with the kids because everyone can feel for the kids, and then I'll go straight for the grit. I'll go for the parents who we're kind of really dealing with, all the way to the point where I was working and have been working for almost 6 years with both victims and perpetrators, and oftentimes the perpetrator is the victim at some point, and it's just kind of ongoing cycle. So the nonprofit's now called Just Human. So it's morphed because it wasn't just for mothers. And Just Human is really, in a sense, kind of like pushing positivity. It's empowerment. It's about how to make everyone realize that we're all just human. We make mistakes. We're awesome. Sometimes we kind of suck, but we're just human at the end of the day, and we can all relate to each other if we sit down and just talk to each other. So, and I'm sure you understand that completely.
Now, you brought up Fortune Society. For those in the audience that aren't familiar with Fortune Society, to be quite frank, I wasn't familiar with Fortune Society until you brought it to my attention. What is that about?
So Fortune Society started, I believe, as a small agency in 1967 by a man named David Rothenberg. He was a big advocate in the 60s and kind of that hippie vibe, and he decided to kind of fight for the underdog. And it started with a play called Fortune in Men's Eyes about, he was a producer in Broadway in New York. So
artsy type. Yeah,
he was presented, nice artsy Jewish guy. He was presented with a play that was about a man's experience in prison, and how he had been sexually assaulted the first night, and just all the violations that happen when you go in there, no matter what you're in there for. But no one wanted to produce it. So Mr. Rothenberg took the play and he decided to try it, and he did a small-scale production, and then he decided to have a little Q&A after, because it's a very it's assaulting information, especially when you're not familiar with it. And people started raising their hands and saying that's not real, that can't be real, that's dramatized, that's too theatrical to be real. And other people raised their hand, no, it's real, it happened to me as well. Started this conversation. That was in the 60s, and it really turned into this huge organization that has a ton of services, but it's specifically for people who are coming out of prison or jail, any kind of criminal justice system contact, and trying to reintegrate into the community and be a part of our society and have pro-social behaviors. And that'll start either at the court system or someone hearing about Fortune Society, And you said you're not familiar with it beforehand, and I wasn't before a Huffington Post article, so I don't blame you on that at all. But the people who are in the criminal justice system, no Fortune Society for sure. But my work is also beyond that agency as well. I've been very compelled by the work at that agency and by the exposure I've had by working there. And I've done work, in England and photography and any kind of advocacy I could do at any chance I can, because that's how you push positivity.
And in doing a little homework, I saw that you had said when people ask you what you do, I think the quote was anything at all.
Yeah.
And that really struck me. And so I guess where does all of this passion and I guess energy come from, or more importantly that why that has gotten you so invigorated to push positivity or to really make positive change? And on the way walking here, I kind of made the comment, it's so fitting that it's raining outside today, because in a lot of times, whether it's pushing positivity on my end or whether it's dealing with incarcerated individuals or people who maybe society has given up on, it isn't always a bright and sunny day. A lot of times you are going to have to go to work, per se, when it is raining outside, when it is not the best conditions. So I guess what has sparked your energy, interest, passion, or your why for doing what you're doing in all facets of your life?
Yeah. I think generally I enjoy people. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy getting to know people, and I think that originally stemmed from me growing up as a twin. So I have a twin sister, and
there's another April.
Well, no, that's exactly the point. That was what we were hearing a lot. Like, oh, you're just like each other. You're just like each other. And as a twin, it's like, no, we're not. We're two different people. Get to know us, talk to us. And now it's pretty obvious when you see us, when you talk to us. We're very different personalities. We're very, very close. And I think that kind of cultivated me being interested in people and comfortable talking to people, because I always had a person with me. And then that kind of personality manifested into passion for people around me, and I was always hungry to learn something new that was uncomfortable. So someone tell me, oh, don't hang out with that person, don't talk to that person, I'm going straight to that person to find out what their story is. And not in a way to take advantage of someone's differences or anything, but to understand them. And to kind of get their story, which is, I think, very important for everyone to be able to tell theirs. And then from there, when I came to New York, like I said, the culture is different over here. It's much more socially proactive. I kind of got thrown into working at Rikers Island, and once I stepped foot in there, it's really hard to forget what you see and what you learn to know over there. It's a completely different world, and for me, completely unfamiliar.
So for people that aren't familiar with Rikers Island, it is a prison.
It's a jail.
And
yeah.
I think that's, again, even the difference between a prison and a jail. I saw something that, the fact that people don't understand what that is. How'd you get thrown into Rikers?
Well, when I finished that initial Mother's Keeper course for the teenagers, that was hosted by the agency Fortune Society. When it ended, I didn't really have an exit plan, but I definitely was not ready to give up or to kind of steer course somewhere else. So I was a little bit desperate, and I just kind of asked around. I said, hey, I want to work here. I facilitated these groups. There must be something. I really had a sense of not knowing where I fit into the community, because I felt like an outsider to the community. And they told me about this position. It's called Discharge Planner. I knew that I was facilitating groups. I accepted it, very eager. I didn't care about any of the details. And the first day, they asked me about my schedule and ability to commute to Rikers Island. And that's the most notorious jail in all of the U.S.
What is the difference between prison and jail?
So the primary difference is that jail is kind of the first step to prison. Prison is once you've been sentenced, you've seen the judge and everything. A jail is essentially, the biggest issue with jail is that it's a holding cell. So you have people in there who are, one, mixed up all together, without it mattering what the crime was, without it mattering whether you've been found guilty or innocent. And because of these issues around speedy trial, you have people who are in there with exorbitant bails and bonds that just can't afford it, because they're from low-income communities, and they are having to fight their own case, and they're mixing with everybody else in this environment that's, you know, pretty aggressive and violent, and not conducive to being your best self.
Now, I'm sure you've gotten a lot of feedback, whether it's from friends and family, you know, why are you helping? And to say it how it probably is said most of the time, why are you helping these people?
Yeah.
How do you handle that question?
Um,
And what does that mean to you, or how do you feel when people kind of phrase it in that way? You know, why are you helping these people? Haven't they committed crimes? Haven't they done things to deserve to be there?
Yeah.
Is that a common question you
all
get?
all the time, especially because of my race and my age. It's kind of like, why are you there? It doesn't really make sense. But it does make sense. Once you're in there, or once you meet these people, you realize that they're the same people that are around you. And a lot of times people get mixed up in things. Even if they don't get mixed up in things, they can be brought into a situation, be in jail, be found innocent, but they're now part of those people. And just the experience of being there will change you to the core. So you become a part of that group. But essentially, it started when I was a counselor for individuals who had been sexually traumatized. And I would go into kind of like the grit of the situation, like the first couple of hours after someone had that experience. And I would help them through the process of reporting, doing medical examinations, a very traumatic experience to follow an already traumatic experience. And I just kept thinking, like, so many people who had perpetrated the trauma had perpetrated multiple traumas. And we're helping the people after it's happened, but we're not addressing why it might have happened, or why someone thought that, you know, violating someone in that way is the only way to go. So I kind of wanted to like dig deeper into the root, and I figured, you know, one person can hurt many people. And if we look at the person who's doing the hurting, maybe we can understand more, maybe we can stop a little bit more of the hurting. And turns out that it's a cycle. The people who are doing the hurting are often people who were horribly hurt at some point. So we kind of have to keep going back to the beginning in order to stop this kind of snowball effect that's happening.
You said that, you know, working in institutions like Rikers and the subset of people really affects you or impacts you to your core. What would you say has been the biggest impact to you, and how has that changed you? How have these experiences changed you as a person?
That's a big question. That's definitely a big one. I think that I'm thinking of my clients right now, and I'm thinking of how I have one particular woman who has prostituted all of her life, essentially since she was 15 years old, and how she's been in and out of the system. I think it was 46 times, and she's only 31. That's a lot for someone. You're essentially calling a jail your home. And when I first met her, all I knew was that she prostituted. All I knew was that she did drugs. And within the first week of just asking about her, or looking at her, or welcoming her into a community, or serving her food, or sitting with her to have a meal, I learned that she was brutally violated at 14 years old. And she was really stuck between two really bad situations. And she was in survival mode, and she's been in survival mode ever since. That's not somebody I would have ever expected to be close to, but I care for her. I feel responsible for her at this point, and you know, I'm very proud of her because today she is 8 months pregnant, and she's healthy, and she's sober, and she hasn't prostituted, and she's in a healthy relationship, and she smiles, and she knows how to communicate with people, even though she has a personality disorder. She learned how to communicate with people productively like an adult, in order to meet goals that she set in her life. And that's somebody that I never would have thought that I felt close to, and it's never somebody I thought I would understand, but it's also somebody that I think a lot of us would look at and never expect this outcome. And that's one story out of literally hundreds of stories that I've heard in 2 years that I've been like really in the trenches with this. So that's why. I know that doesn't really say how that changes me, but
it's the people in their story, and
Yeah.
and connecting, and I guess so. Just to go back a little further, before working with the Mother's Keeper and also Fortune Society, you also worked with sexual abuse victims.
Survivors.
Survivors.
Yes.
Survivors.
That's a more empowering word, that's why.
Now it seems like you've always worked with people who really could use the most assistance or help. And
it's vulnerability in that
why,
population.
why didn't you go be a student, counselor, or guidance counselor in school, or just something light? Why did you choose to kind of go in? And the reason I ask is, people ask me a lot of times, well, why are you pushing positivity? Like, don't you know how the world is?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like this mentality of it's gone already. Like, there's nothing you can do to help it.
Like this hopelessness.
So I guess why did you choose to not listen to the masses? And probably, like I said, maybe, and I'm assuming here that maybe when you told your family or some other people, hey, this is what I want to do, they kind of looked at you a little funny and said, well, what do you mean?
Yeah. So the sexual assault survivor opportunity really came up organically at I think it was a brunch. Yeah, it was a brunch. It was really casual. The director of the program was there, and it was a friend of a friend, and we were talking, and I told him, I just want to help people. I wanted to be in medicine originally. I wanted to be an ER doctor, so I always wanted to be in the middle of it. Maybe it's like an adrenaline rush with people, I'm not sure, but he was listening to me. He's like, well, you should just do something about it. I was a Pier college counselor, so I helped other students. So I did do that. I helped other students get into college. But I wanted something that was meaningful, and I've always had this thought that when you see someone at their lowest or most vulnerable point, you really know who they are, and you get to be a part of them creating a small piece of their identity, and that's the most profound thing I think that you can share with somebody. So he told me about this program working with survivors of sexual assault, and I thought, I had all these biases that came up. Oh, I don't want to hear women cry all the time. So wrong. That's totally not how it is. One, it's not only women. I think my first client was male, as a matter of fact, and not everyone cries. And specifically with something that is as intimate and sensitive of a topic as sex or sexual violation, you get all these different impacts into someone's life. You can have someone who is almost absent. You can have someone who is, out becoming an escort. There's this full spectrum of reaction, and it's so interesting to see that kind of human condition. So I had this bias. I said, whatever, I'll do it anyways. I'll give it a try. Like, it'll look good on my resume. And 3 years later, I was sad to say goodbye to that program to come out to New York. Well, I was excited to come to New York, but I was sad to end that program. But I stayed there for 3 years, and literally, I think the first client was, it's sad to say it, but the first client was a 3-year-old boy, and I didn't deal with crying necessarily, and I didn't deal with an emotional woman, and I dealt with my biases in that moment, and I helped and they were only Spanish speaking, and I don't really speak Spanish, but I worked with the parents in order to kind of buffer around the trauma for this kid. So it was just, I said yes even though I felt these things, and it turns out that it was nothing like I expected it to be, and that always kind of drives me. Do what makes you uncomfortable. Do what other people say you can't do.
And I think going back to what you previously said about when you see a person that everybody says, hey, don't talk to that person. I can relate in terms of well, why? And if nobody's talking to that person, that means that you're more apt to be able to connect with them because nobody else is talking to them. So I definitely see some relation in terms of how you approach people who maybe aren't as connected as others.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to society and connecting with other people. Sometimes the people that are the most connected don't connect at all.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a gratifying experience and also a humbling experience to be able to speak to some of these people. And I'm sure it puts things into perspective for you very quickly.
Yeah.
And when you maybe hear some other people complaining about how bad of a day they're having.
Or when I say that, because I say that and go, wait, no. But I do think that one way that I kind of connect your story, my story, and your mission, my mission, which really seems to be the same, is that I do all of this work, and through all of that work, seeing all of that trauma and everything like that, and people's deep stories, I came and worked at the gym, and I worked at the front desk, and
Totally logical step.
yeah. I was actually watching a movie out here on this pier. It was one of those movie on the pier nights, and I saw the gym. I thought, it seems like a happy place to work, and I thought I'd throw in a couple 4 o'clock mornings to my life in order to make it more happy, and just kind of balance that the work burden, the emotional burden. And I have to say that you never know who's in front of that front desk, because it's really just anybody can be there. And you were from the beginning very good at kind of stopping, hey, how you doing? My name's Joshua. Ever since then, it's been, we talk and everything
Shocker.
like that. Yeah, big shocker. So it's been cool for me to kind of see the push positivity and the HIGH5iVER movement kind of morph from the initial ideas and everything. And you literally never know unless you talk to the person who's at the front desk or talk to the person who's on the elevator. That really works. That connects people to say hello.
I think kind of hit the nail on the head there in terms of talk with the person at the front desk, and the front desk can mean so many things in life. There's so many people we walk by every single day, and the fact of the matter is we all have a story, and we all have a past, we all have the moment we're living in, and we all hopefully have a future. And with that being said, it's so important to really connect and to really be able to listen and not only share your story but hear other stories as well. And I can tell you from hearing your story, and I'm sure we've only kind of like scratched the surface in terms of the experiences and the stories and the people that you've connected with, but you've been a very integral part in terms of the HIGH5iVER movement. When I come in the morning and I'm like, hey, what do you think about this, or what about this idea, or how about this? You've been very important in terms of being a good just bouncing wall for me to bounce ideas off of, and always give me good feedback. And the fact that we're sitting here today pushing positivity on the pier, this literally, I was out yesterday flying a drone on the pier with this guy Carl that I met
Carl the drone guy.
Carl the drone guy, right? We all get one sentence in life, by the way. What's yours? If I'm the HIGH5 guy, I could deal with that. By connecting with him, by just taking that minute to be like, hey, what's your name? What are you doing out here? And then, which led to us meeting up again yesterday, which led to me walking to the gym. And I was like, man, well, now we really have to meet other people and talk to other people, get their story. And it hit me. It literally came from a divine place, whether it's universe, God, whatever you want to call it, came from somewhere, and it said pushing positivity on the pier. And I literally walked into the gym, and you were sitting there, and then we were talking about the trip that I just had. I just got engaged, and which was super exciting.
Yeah.
And it was like, there wasn't another person besides the woman at the front desk, April, that I would have loved to have episode 1 of Pushing Positivity on the Pier, because from the very beginning you've been so supportive, and I knew there was so much more of a story there, and I'd love to have you back at some point to talk even more. And I guess with a little bit of time we have left, I really want to make each of these conversations actionable. So if somebody wanted to get involved with what you're doing, or they wanted to make, if they were moved by your story and the stories of the people that you've highlighted today, where can they go? What can they do? How could they make pushing positivity actionable in terms of what you're doing? And you could talk to them.
Okay. A quick brainstorm happening. So there are a lot of organizations specifically in New York. There's Fortune Society, there's Osborne, there's the Vera Institute, Center for Urban Community Services. There's a ton of stuff in New York specifically that you can work for or volunteer for. Could also reach out to me too via email.
What's your email?
Justhumaninc, INC, @gmail. So it's pretty easy to remember.
We'll put a link in the comments as well.
And I think that I'm always very open to people kind of coming to me and asking, like, this is the situation, and this is what I want to do. How can I figure out a way to help? Because that's always been me. And the other way is, specifically with the population I work with, is when you're riding the subway, in New York City and you're sweaty and you're mad and you just want to be wherever you're trying to go, and a homeless person walks in and asks you for change or asks you for food or something like that, or maybe just yells at you or whatever. Just kind of understand that like your reaction comes from you and it's not necessarily a projection of them. Everyone has a story, and you don't necessarily have to give somebody quarters or food or anything, but maybe make eye contact with them or smile. That's nice. If someone smiles at you, and in most cases you'll get a gee, thank you, thanks for that smile, and it actually does really make an impact on people's lives because it makes them feel accepted. There's less shame in the experience because there is nobody that I've ever met in my work that wants to be there on the subway asking strangers for quarters. So I think that's the first thing, is kind of bringing that mentality to a daily situation. Does that work? That works?
It's amazing. As you can see, April is an absolutely amazing soul. She's doing amazing work. She's helping a lot of people. And again, definitely reach out to her via email. It's going to be in the link in the comment section. And I guess with that being said, there's one more thing to do. Two, but maybe the most important thing is it's going to be high five. And number two.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And so this has been episode 1 of Pushing Positivity on the Pier. Super excited to connect with more people like April, but then again, there's no one else like April. With that being said, hope everybody has an absolutely amazing day, an amazing week. Keep pushing positivity.
High five.
High five.